On a chilly November morning in 2021, agents from the IIS Criminal Investigation Division stormed a $1 million mansion in Athens, Georgia. During a search on the second floor, they discovered a Cheetos popcorn tin hiding in a bathroom closet. Inside a tin, wrapped in a towel, was a single-board computer that held over $3 billion in Bitcoin. Jimmy Zhong had stolen all these Bitcoins nearly a decade earlier. And the person he stole them from not only didn't ask for them back, but even thanked him and threw in an extra 5,000 bitcoins. For several years, Jimmy lived the luxurious life of a billionaire until he made one small but fatal mistake, which ultimately cost him not only billions of dollars, but also his freedom.
Jimmy, how do you feel after this today? Jimmy, you feel like the judge was fair today? Why'd you steal the money, Jimmy?
An incredible scam or a 1 in a billion chance. This is the astonishing story of a 20-year-old crypto millionaire from a small town. His wild parties, private chats, fake friends, and one dark secret.
Shocked. I was shocked. I was so surprised.
The story of Jimmy Zhong, who lived his best life for 10 years, a life millions around the world only dream of. The story of a secret billionaire. In school, Jimmy was an ordinary nerd. No one wanted to be his friend, and his classmates bullied him relentlessly, often beating him up for his weight. His parents couldn't help much, as they were too busy trying to make ends meet. From a young age, Jimmy longed for recognition and love. The only place where he could escape the harsh, hostile world was his room, where he spent hours on his computer. By the time he finished high school, he had taught himself several programming languages. After enrolling in university, Jimmy became not only interested in hacking but also in partying. However, partying was expensive and he didn't have the money for it. Around the time, Jimmy stumbled upon Bitcoin on a programmer's forum. Interestingly, he chose the nickname MB300SD on that forum, which stood for Mercedes 300SD, the car he had dreamed of owning all his life. Jimmy believed that once he could afford that car, he would finally gain the popularity and recognition he craved. But he was still so far from that. Bitcoin was worth next to nothing, and making good money from it seemed impossible. To put it in perspective, in 2009, 5,000 Bitcoins could be sold for just $5. Jimmy was one of the first to start mining crypto on his computer. But he eventually gave up because the future of cryptocurrency seemed incredibly uncertain.
Paying for something without hard cash, credit cards, or checks. It's a new form of virtual payment known as Bitcoins.
All right, we're going to talk about the cyber threat now. And who's ever heard of the Bitcoin?
That Bitcoins are no more kind of suspicious or anonymous than cash.
David, you want to get paid in Bitcoins?
No, I don't want to get paid in US dollars.
We don't even know who invented this.
Bitcoin isn't controlled by a government or a central bank. It's a completely virtual currency that's traded on the internet, but it can create very real wealth.
However, he did manage to mine a small amount of Bitcoin back then. And then, a couple of years later, when Bitcoin started to rise in value, Jimmy was finally able to use his skills to make some money for girls, alcohol, and drugs. This amount of money didn't make him extremely rich yet, but it allowed Jimmy to indulge in substances and party to the extreme every week. And it's this addiction to drugs that would, in a completely unbelievable way, soon turn him into a billionaire. But he had no idea about that at the time. In 2011, the first ever darknet marketplace, Silk Road, was launched. There, you could buy street drugs, weapons, and pornography using cryptocurrency. And Jimmy began buying goods there for personal use.
The site operated much like eBay and allowed users to buy and sell illegal drugs, guns, and even hire hitmen.
The site allowed users to keep Bitcoins directly in their account, like a deposit. One day in 2012, Jimmy decided to withdraw all his Bitcoins from the deposit and accidentally clicked the withdraw button twice. Incredibly, this resulted in him withdrawing the entire amount twice, effectively doubling his Bitcoins. This is how, according to Jimmy, he accidentally discovered a bug in the system that no one had noticed for an entire year. After that, Jimmy created a new account, deposited 500 Bitcoins, and began clicking the button repeatedly. This allowed him to withdraw 2,000 Bitcoins. He then created about a dozen more accounts and repeated the operation several times. In the end, he managed to withdraw 50,000 Bitcoins from Silk Road, which at that time was worth $620,000. Of course, this didn't go unnoticed. After that, the owner of Silk Road, known by the moniker Dread Pirate Roberts, contacted Jimmy. But instead of demanding the bitcoins back, he thanked Jimmy for discovering the bug, asked how he found it, and even gave him an additional 5,000 bitcoins as a bonus. Why would the platform owner give another 5,000 bitcoins to someone who had just effectively robbed it? Well, we'll come back to that question later. In the meantime, Jimmy had reached the top of the world, or more accurately, cruising around in the very Mercedes 300 SD he had always dreamed of. He embarked on a years-long alcohol and drug-fueled trip, surrounding himself with people he considered friends. Though to them, he was little more than a walking wallet. In 2018, when Zhong's beloved Georgia Bulldogs made it to the Rose Bowl, they gathered his party friends, rented a private jet, and took the whole gang to Los Angeles.
And Jimmy rented a really nice Airbnb, and he got everyone really nice tickets to the game also. He ended up giving everyone a budget, and that was very unexpected, just having a friend giving all his friends that came with him on the trip money to just purchase items on Rodeo Drive. So it was kind of like, am I dreaming? It was a very crazy moment.
He gave each of his friends $10,000 and told them to spend it on whatever they wanted.
Everyone went to the Cartier store first and then just bought a lot of purses, belts, jewelry, coats, stuff like that. It was pretty wild. I mean, that doesn't happen every day.
In addition to his bungalow in Athens, he buys himself a home on nearby Lake Lanier. He buys a boat, jet skis, and expensive cars.
He was just kind of a friend of a friend of a friend that I had met in Athens, Georgia. He's kind of antisocial, doesn't like to be touched, won't really shake your hand, just kind of stand there and say, hey. And then after, we start drinking and stuff, that's whenever he loosens up, and that's whenever he kind of, has a personality. But before he starts drinking, there's virtually no personality. We were all in the same bachelor party together. We all went to Miami. James financed the whole thing, private plane, chartered yacht. Really, the only way that he would spend his money is not for himself, but to impress other people. If there was girls around, that's whenever he all of a sudden is buying drinks and tapping his black card on the bar. So somebody notices that he has a black card and then buys everybody else drinks. That way, he puts off that image of wealth and being successful.
His life was filled with parties, cocaine trips, and paid women. He thought he was happy and believed he had everything he ever wanted. Jimmy's friends kept assuring him that he was doing everything right, and Jimmy believed them. Jimmy admitted that he spent most of his fortune on parties. As he said, he probably spent about $500,000 just on partying downtown. He was repeatedly pulled over for drunk driving. And once, his addiction to drugs and love of showing off nearly landed him in jail for a very ridiculous reason.
So Jimmy was in a restaurant talking to some girls, and he happens to mention that he has $30,000 worth of blow at his house if they want to come back and party.
$30,000 worth of coke?
$30,000 of cocaine.
Unfortunately for Jimmy, there was an off-duty police officer sitting at the next table. It was really bad timing for showing off. With a quick phone call, other officers arrived and Jimmy was arrested. They found some drugs on him and he got hit with a couple of felony charges.
So he's drunk and disorderly, he's busted for coke possession, he's bragging to girls in bars. I mean, the guy sounds like his life was a little bit out of control.
I think it was. I think Jimmy was always looking for more. He was looking for a friend.
But overall, Jimmy could have continued that lifestyle for many more years, if not for one fateful day. On March 13, 2019, the local police department in Athens, Georgia, received a call. Athens is a small college town, and most calls to the police here are about minor incidents like fights or theft. But this call was different. The Athens police had never received a call like this before. On the other end of the line was a young male voice.
Clark County 911. What is your name, sir?
It's Jimmy Zhong, Z-H-O-N-G.
The call was made by 20-year-old Jimmy Zhong. Over the phone, he reported that while he was away, someone broke into his home and stole 150 bitcoins and $400,000 in cash.
I'm having a panic attack.
Okay. Do you need an ambulance?
Zhong sounds distressed, and a lot of money is missing.
If you had an approximate amount to say the total value was for the money?
Probably close to $400,000.
By making that call, Jimmy was taking a huge risk because the stolen money was just a tiny fraction of what he actually had. And that was his dog's secret, one that nobody, especially the police, should ever know. Nevertheless, he was desperate to find out who had robbed him, and he was clearly scared. In the footage from the security cameras, you can see the moment of the break-in. And here, by the way, you can spot Jimmy's beloved Mercedes. The video shows a skinny young man breaking a window and moving around as if he had been there before, knowing exactly what he was looking for and where to find it. All signs pointed to someone from Jimmy's circle of friends being involved in the robbery. But despite their efforts, the police investigation led nowhere. They couldn't identify the thief even though Jimmy's house was practically covered with cameras, inside and out, including the road outside. As a result, the Athens police occasionally reached out to Jimmy for more footage from his surveillance system. Yet this time, the police weren't able to help him. And when the police couldn't identify a suspect, Jimmy turned to a local private investigator, Robin Martinelli, to help him figure out who took all that money. The first question that comes to mind for anyone who hears this crazy story is, why did he even call the police over such a relatively small amount? It was obviously strange to anyone around him that Jimmy kept so much cash at home and seemed to have access to such money without any visible source of income. Martinelli spent a lot of time with Jimmy, investigating which of his so-called friends might have broken into his house that night. Jimmy kept insisting that the money was well hidden and that only a few friends and a few people knew he kept cash there. However, one question kept nagging at her mind.
What are you doing with that much cash? And I asked over and over, and he said he had invested it. It made no sense. And I tell just about everybody, before you hire me, I'm married to a cop, my girls are cops.
The same question arose with the local police. But Jimmy kept telling the same story that he had simply invested in bitcoins. Surprisingly, the Athens police were satisfied with this explanation. But that changes when the police investigator gets a call from the agents and the IIS. Across the country, a crack team of IRS criminal investigators specializing in cryptocurrency had spent years tracking the 2012 hack of a criminal dark web marketplace called the Silk Road.
Anything that you send through this internet is completely encrypted and nobody knows that it's you who sent it.
Someone had stolen 50,000 bitcoins from the drug dealers, gun runners, and other criminals who used that site. As the price of Bitcoin skyrocketed over the next few years, the value of that astonishing heist climbed to more than $3 billion. Yes, they definitely needed to know who owned such a fortune.
Bitcoin, the digital currency created a dozen years ago as an alternative to cash, is exploding in value.
A single coin has achieved $69,202 in trading today, breaking its previous record.
Bitcoin can go up between 300% and 500%.
However, until 2018, the IRS agents had no leads. That was until one crucial event occurred. This is where the story takes an interesting turn with the IRS agent's discovery.
Hey, this is Trevor and Sean. They're going to be with me.
These men are specialists in tracking blockchain transactions. Here they are, sitting next to Jimmy. The IRS hired him to figure out who stole those 50,000 bitcoins. For several years, they had been trying to trace the thief. And only now, in a transaction from 2018, did they find trails leading back to Silk Road, where a name appeared. Whose name do you think? Jimmy. In short, Jimmy made what seemed like a small but fatal mistake. From his home, he made a transaction of just $800 on a crypto exchange. The beautiful thing about the blockchain is that all transactions are preserved going back to 2009 when Bitcoin was first launched. But you don't know who made them. Most crypto exchanges at that time didn't require personal information and were private, but not all of them. And Jimmy made a transaction through an exchange that had a Know Your Customer rule. When making a transaction there, you had to provide your name and other personal information. And the owner of the exchange is required by law to provide information about the client who made the transaction upon request. The IRS requested the information from the exchange, and it turned out to be Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy had used his real name, which gave him away. Then, the police decided to visit his home, accompanied by crypto investigators, under the cover of wanting to discuss robbery at his house. In reality, they were there to gather information about him and his connections to a crime from 10 years ago.
You guys get this solved, I'm going to invite y'all up for a beer whenever y'all want. All right.
He's relaxed, friendly, and easily engages in conversation. It seems like Jimmy just craves some normal human interaction. He shows them around his house as if they are his new friends. All the while, the investigators are trying to find any clue that links Jimmy to the theft of Bitcoin.
Are you doing your own floor? Huh? Are you doing tile work? That's leftover from... This is the concrete tile?
After chatting about unrelated topics, the investigators decide to ask him a more personal question.
Okay, so... I guess kind of a personal question is, how did you acquire the money? I don't even know what you do, Jimmy.
I'm in these days. I'm in real estate development. I'm the funding.
After that, Jimmy talks about how much money he has because of it. He shows the investigators a photo of a suitcase stuffed with $1 million and admits he took it to impress a girl. Next, they ask Zhong about his history with Bitcoin, and Zhong reveals his involvement with crypto goes all the way back to 2009, the same year Bitcoin was first launched. He even shows them to 2 Bitcoin mining chips in his house. After the house tower, the federal agents decide they have enough evidence to tie Zhong to the 2012 Silk Road hack. And all of this happened because he called 911 to report that he had been robbed of $400,000.
He's sitting on what would be $3 billion worth of stolen assets, and he calls the cops to report a theft of just a fraction of that. Who does that?
Jimmy.
But suspicions alone aren't enough. How do you get irrefutable proof that it was Jimmy who stole the money? How do you find the stolen money? Sitting on the L-shaped couch next to Jimmy, they realized where all the answers were. It was Jimmy's laptop.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to need you guys to look away because this is going to be my password.
Okay.
I'm just watching, it's like you're typing a sentence over there.
Oh, wait, that's why.
So is this like the equivalent of your hot wallet where you say you have 1,500? This is your play money?
This is the hot wallet, and then the cold wallet is, I'm not going to tell you where it is.
Let me explain about the wallets. A cold wallet is used for long-term storage of cryptocurrency, where the majority of Jimmy's stolen bitcoins were kept. A hot wallet, on the other hand, is always connected to the internet and can be accessed at any moment. And this is where the investigator finally sees what they came for on Jimmy's laptop screen. A crypto wallet filled to the brim with a massive amount of Bitcoin. $70 million in Bitcoin, right there next to them. As they left Jimmy's house, the investigators knew they had found what they were looking for. This moment marked a turning point in Jimmy's life, although he didn't realize it yet. Now the investigators faced a more challenging task. They needed to gain full access to his laptop. So they returned to Jimmy's home once again under the pretense of wanting to help him find the thief. But this time, they had only one critical chance to ensure that the years-long operation would end in success. Here's the scene. They enter the house, and now there are only minutes left before Jimmy learns the truth. The investigators haven't come to help him. They've come to search his house for evidence linking him to the theft of $3 billion. The plan was for Jimmy to open his computer and enter his password, then walk away, leaving the wallet accessible. The hardest part was making sure he didn't suspect a thing. As soon as Jimmy opened his laptop and entered the password, one of the investigators asked for permission to check out his balcony. He asked Jimmy to step across the room and help open the sticky sliding glass door. This was the crucial moment. Jimmy could leave the laptop unattended, giving them access. And it worked. Jimmy got up from the couch and walked to the balcony, at which point another investigator inserted a jiggler into Jimmy's laptop. A jiggler is a small device that looks like a USB stick and keeps the computer's cursor moving back and forth, preventing it from going into sleep mode. Just as Jimmy stepped onto the balcony, the investigator told him that he was actually from the IRS investigation division and that they were there to search his house. What followed was straight out of a movie. A team of agents stormed Jimmy's house, fully geared up, arrested him, and began searching the premises.
I didn't know what to think. I mean, I'd never
seen that many police anywhere in my walk of life, and then they're all in my front yard, and I'm like, holy cow.
The officers turned the entire house upside down. On the second floor, in a bathroom cabinet, they found a popcorn tin. Inside, wrapped in a towel, they discovered a single-board computer loaded with $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. They also used a dog specifically trained to sniff out electronic devices, leading them to a safe buried in concrete beneath some basement floor tiles. Inside the safe, they found a wallet containing cryptocurrency addresses, physical bitcoins from the early days of crypto, precious metals, and cash. So it seemed like the case was solved, and this marked the end of Jimmy Zhong's carefree life. In many ways, it was. However, as the investigation continued, agents began to suspect that Zhong's skills are proof that he is more than just a typical hacker with a lot of luck. This case raised a lot of questions. First, the IRS concluded that Zhong was what's known as a Bitcoin OG, slang for original gangster, referring to one of the early developers who helped drive the rise of cryptocurrency. He would often offer suggestions of how to improve the code. This cast doubt on Jimmy's story that he had simply been lucky enough to find a bug. Do you still remember the story of the magic double click on the withdraw button? That's how Jimmy explained it after his arrest. He claimed he just accidentally double-clicked the button, found a bug, and got rich. That seems awfully simple, doesn't it? Just imagine, according to his version, for an entire year, not a single user on Silk Road accidentally double-clicked that button. Do you believe that? The agents didn't either. There is also something odd about the behavior of Ross Ulbricht, the man who created the Silk Road site under the moniker Dread Pirate Roberts. Why would the Dread Pirate Roberts reward Jimmy for stealing from him? That doesn't make any sense. During interrogation, Jimmy said his skills also impressed Ross Ulbricht, and Jimmy and the Dread Pirate Roberts were in contact with each other. Investigators didn't find any evidence of their connection, but it's still highly suspicious. Another point is the amount Jimmy withdrew from the Silk Road, 50,000 bitcoins. Why that exact amount? Imagine you have access to a nearly limitless source of cryptocurrency. At what point would you decide you've taken enough? However, it seems Jimmy knew the exact limits. With the monikers that Jimmy had used, agents discovered that he knew precisely how much was in Silk Road's hot wallet in September 2012. So in that case, he knew exactly what the maximum amount he could get away with was, and he hit that max. Moreover, the investigation revealed that Jimmy used highly sophisticated methods to launder the money. For instance, he employed Bitcoin mixers, which significantly complicate the tracking of transactions. All of this doesn't seem like just luck smiling on an extraordinary hacker. The court concluded that Jimmy was guilty of fraud.
It is the DOJ's second largest financial seizure to date, following the seizure of $3.6 billion allegedly stolen cryptocurrency linked to a 2016 hack of the crypto exchange Bitfinex.
What happened to all his money? After the more than $3 billion in Bitcoin ended up in the hands of the government, by law, all those who were victims of 2012 theft could file claims to recover their stolen funds. However, those victims were drug dealers, child pornographers, and other criminals. Of course, none of them came forward to claim the bitcoins, so the US federal budget was replenished by $3 billion. No friends or family showed up at Jimmy's trial, but he did receive half a dozen letters of support. In his final statement to the court, Jimmy said that Bitcoin made him feel important and worth something, and he asked for no jail time so he could take care of his closet remaining friend, his dog, Chad. Chad is 13 years old, ill, fit through a tube, and Jimmy spent a lot of time caring for him. The court denied his request and sentenced Jimmy to 1 year and 1 day in prison.
Who were his friends? Who was he hanging out with?
I remember a female, a couple of males, just about his age that were just ne'er-do-wells. Very casual, plastic, not really caring, maybe using Jimmy a little bit. Maybe.
They were using him?
I don't know if they really cared about Jimmy.
Yeah. Did he know that?
I don't think he knew that or wanted to know that. Jimmy wanted to be loved, or Jimmy wanted friends. Jimmy was a good guy.